Hello everyone and welcome back to the fourth edition of Winter Data and AI Meetup. Thank you for joining us today. Today's session is about modernizing legacy data pipelines with AI tools. Our speaker is Felipe, Senior Data Engineer at EPAM Colombia. In this talk, he will share his real experience of using AI tools like Copilot to improve legacy data pipelines. So if you enjoy this event, please like and subscribe to support our community. Your feedback helps us to improve our future meetups. Also, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat and we will discuss them with Felipe after the presentation. So, and now let's welcome our speaker, Felipe, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this session, and I hope you find value methods, value information on this speak. So let me start with the modernizing legacy data pipelines with AI assisting my Copilot journey. So thanks to Data Community Latam for also the data science community to support me on this event. And this will be the agenda for today's session. Basically, I'm going to develop this in the following slides. Well, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Felipe Chaves. I'm electrical and electronic engineer, and I started working with data since university, took some machine learning courses, and I have been working in data engineering domains for almost 5 years. And even when I started on backend development, algorithm development, and some other tasks, I'm an active learner. I really enjoy to boost my abilities and learn new ways to do the things. So now I'm really enthusiastic about the AI abilities and AI tools that we can use for do our job a lot of better and faster. And finally, I'm passionate about data systems because I have been involved in this work for a long period now. But yeah, I need to continue learning, and I hope you can find value on my experience. So, let me start with my promise of value. I hope that first you enjoy this session, but also you find some practical methods that have been useful for me, that I have applied and have worked. And it basically is related with the software development life cycles, like improve debugging, documenting, implementing, mainly focused on data systems, data engineering, and also testing, use BDD testing, behavioral data development driven testing, and finally how we need to balance this supporting with AI with our technical and engineering judgment, our technical knowledge and our experience to get the most valuable outcomes from this technology. So, first of all, these concerns raised from the challenges that I have faced throughout this year, the common challenge that we have faced. All of us have faced at some point working with data pipelines. Every time that we join into a new project, we face some outdated technologies that doesn't have support or have the warning that it's going to be deprecated soon. And all that represents a lot of risk for us for the project, like incompatibility issues, vulnerabilities that we can be traced through other tools, and in general, that increase the risk for maintaining this legacy code. So that's one of the main issues that we usually face. Also, we have faced some really big repositories with files with hundred or thousand of lines, with complex functions, without documentations. They are really difficult to debugging. If we use technologies as a Spark that have lazy evaluations, that could be more complicated to track the changes and in which part of the code is being facing some issues. So that lack of documentation also increased the complexity of the systems. I have faced some codes that have just bug comments or even hard-coded values. For example, in the case of business logics that has been implemented on the code, we can find values without any reference. That also for the person who developed that code could be also complicated to answer what is the reason of that value or that line, because maybe he did a really long time ago. So the documentation is not just uh, a boring task sometimes, is also a part of the process of transfer knowledge and make this code more readable and maintainable. Of course, the documentation is a manual tedious task that consumes times that usually is not involved in the task itself. Is something like extra that you need to do, because in this fast environment that we need to deliver value as soon as possible, we are really focused on generate more features, implement new functionalities, and this documentation task is usually put as an extra step on our task. So that make that becomes a really tedious task, but with the AI now, it's going to be really useful and valuable and more easy to handle. Also, I have faced some challenges in the performance, basically because some code was initially created or thought for handle small data sets in a one-line process, and suddenly they grow up too much, and they make this code um, face some unnecessary copy of the data frames, but practices or but handling of memory resources. So when we uh, when we review these performance bottlenecks that usually they are not too visible when we handle small data, when we move to big data, that makes more visible. And in that point is when we start to face the slower processing, high memory and CPU usage, and difficult to debugging, to scale this code. We face some increase in infrastructure costs that basically is the pain that most of our clients can face with the bills. So for this reason, take advantage of AI to improve this process. It's so important. Also, how I mentioned previously, I have worked with Apache Spark, and usually we need to provide infrastructure, some clusters to process these big data sets, and some of these clusters require some specific parameters and configurations that even when you have worked with the tool for a long time, could be really hard to memorize all of possible configurations and all the ways that you can use for tuning this cluster depends on the process that you are running. So also what I have seen is a really long list of parameters without any comment, any traceability, just set as it is, and that can generate misconfiguration, cause issues in performance, cause issues, and many other problems that we're going to try to resolve, usually with the help of and the support of AI tools like Copilot. As I mentioned, usually these pipelines start with a POC, a small data workflow, and when we found that is valuable and can be deployed to production, it starts to become more huge and more robust. And then we need to migrate this from a single tenant, from a small data set to a multi-tenant, support different um, data sets through the same workflow or different workflows. And that exposed the inefficiencies that the code can have from the beginning, that maybe at small scale is not possible to see or yeah, identify in an early stage. And of course, that limits us in the scalability and the way that we can respond to the business necessities that is usually growing faster in this world tech. Let me move a little bit. Also, as a data engineers, we usually have data pipelines with a lot of transformations that we need to handle the traceability. And when we have complex legacy data pipelines, it's usually hard to do a trace of a specific column or a specific value. For example, I have faced some issues or inconvenience with some clients that say, or stakeholders that say, hey, this value is wrong and I'm seeing wrong data. Can you track what is the reason, what is the root cause of analysis of this value? And when you try to do the lineage of that data, could be a really hard, annoying, complicated to try to trace this column or this value in a really complex code and logic. So of course that has a high impact in the business decisions and limits the way that we can debugging, because we usually try to replicate the error in order to identify what's happening. But when we are not completely sure in which stage is being modified this value, so that makes more complex to solve the issue and takes more time. That also is money too. So in this Copilot serves like or comes like a really good tool that can help us to increase and our productivity and reduce the time, reduce the friction, and also help us with the boring tasks of our daily routine. So that's something that we need to consider it, that is that have a trade-off. Now we are moving from the hours of an engineer to the token. The tokens is the new money, the new coin that we are using for work with these AI agents. I'm sharing here in the screen the rates that we usually been billing for these different kinds of models. Some of them could be rated by 3 times, others could be free. But of course, that depends on the limitations of the models, the window that they can have, they have for our requests. That's called the premium request. For in the case of the GitHub Copilot, specifically, we can access more complex models like Opus 4.6, and we need to be aware about the input tokens, the output tokens, and the input cache tokens, because they are being billed in a different way. So all of them forms part of the pricing that we need. This is the new way that we are managing the money in this case. Let me share this meme. Maybe you have seen this on LinkedIn. We need tokens. We'll code for tokens. Please give some tokens. Well, the tokens is the new Bitcoin in this our tech world. So it's so important to take in mind how we can take advantage of these tokens, how we can do a cost reduction, be efficient in the use of tokens every time that we use AI Copilot. It's not just use Copilot, it's try to use in an efficient way. So that's the reason that I'm gonna share with you my journey. I start with understanding legacy code and documentation with Copilot using something really simple but useful. So simple but useful. Why? Because a simple word, I invite a chat word like workspace or terminal can you help you to reduce the scope for the window for the model, the agent that you are using for a specific task. So let me show you in the right side of the slide. You can see that I use just workspace and explain to request to the model, to the agent that explained me a snippet part of the code that I was using for ingesting data from one of our source. So why? Because, well, the code was a little bit long, complex, have different layers. So that helped me to understand how the code was implemented. And also you can use this explain word after the agent generate an answer, an output, to validate that you are understanding every result, every output that the agent is providing you, not just to believe blinding. No, you need to be capable to understand what is the output that is being generated, how it works, because sometimes the models can generate code with a lot of complexity too, with different libraries, packages, approaches that are not familiar for us. So we need to try to understand how it's been working, how this solution fit to our standards. Um, Integrate these slash commands are really useful. How you can see, it can basically summarize a really long file into a simple words that you can understand faster. Also, you can limitate the scope of AI Copilot using a selection or just picking one file at a time. Here in this case, I use a function to document it. I introduce a prompt, fix, adjust the docstring to Google style. Why Google style? Well, that's the standard that I'm currently using for docstring on my Python functions, and he automatically generate all the information that I need from that function. What is the summary of the function, the argues that we need, and the type hints that I need for that specific function. Type hints have been a really valuable way to scope the parameters and the type of parameters that I can receive inside of my function. Because how you maybe know, in Python, we don't have, Python is not a typed programming language, but this type is valuable because you can limit the variables and the type of variable that you're receiving on your function, reducing the possible scenarios that your function fail. So that's something that I did automatically, not just for one function, for all the repository, and that's reduced a lot of the time that I need to use for for do this manual task. But now there is a new way to do the things. There is a game changer, and it's completely related with a systematic and well-structured way to use Copilot. Because the how I mentioned previously was the beginning, start using some commands that can help us. But when you want to uh, increase or leverage, take more advantage of the Copilot, you need to basically generate a system that is easy to reproduce, repeat it, and apply again and get some similar results every time that you use it. So also, this system helps to enhance collaboration, reduce the friction, set standards, have a clear guideline to produce code in a professional way and have a standard throughout all teams or also in a whole organization. So that's why I would like to introduce the journey adopting AI. That's something that I heard recently in another talk that was really, really valuable for me. That is basically we start in an isolated way using Copilot, just like we believe that it works for us. But then we move to the second level of adoption, that is basically generate a system that is that it can be used through a whole team, interact with other team members, and share these tools and the documentation to increase the benefits from the AI Copilot. And the latest that is, I think that we are working to move to that level of adoption is to be more disruptive, maybe generate new novel frontiers for the use of AI, maybe related with the new agents, and introduce this to the software development lifecycle, and more advanced things that is out of the scope of this talk, but maybe soon we're gonna see as a normal in our daily work. What is the advantage of introduce a system and a systematic approach to use Copilot? Well, provide clear context, help to the agents to reduce the hallucinations, and basically we can get a more accurate results aligned with the standards that we usually have in a project or in an organization, and also that maybe reduce the time that we need to spend reviewing the outputs generated by the AI. So that increases the trust that we can put on the AI generate solutions. So that's the reason behind, one of the reasons. Another is accelerates onboarding. When we have documented, really well documented code, the system, if we change, we move from one agent to another, it's going to be easy to have the context uh, for each agent instead of repeat it again, copy and paste the context in the chat line. We can set in a more systematic fashion, and it's also useful for our teammates. In case that we need to introduce a new team member, that's something that happens too frequently in this industry, that we have a lot of rotation. We need to be capable to accelerate the onboarding, because if you accelerate the onboarding, that means that this new team member can generate value, deliver value faster, and help in the daily requirements for the team, and reduce the time, the complexity, review the code, and this learning curve could be speed up. So that's another important aspect that we found there. Promotes consistency. Well, what I have found in really big and complex projects with a lot of repositories is that uh, it's basically the the code is being generated for different team members, and each of us have different backgrounds. We learn different ways to code, but when we are trying to generate a repository of code, we need to set some standards in order to track this consistency, and in order that we are talking the same language. Because if not, every time that you're going to change or apply any change or fix a bug, is a nightmare. You are trying to you are trying basically to reinvent the wheel. You are trying to learn again every time, because it's been implemented in a completely different fashion. How Copilot helped me most is to standard the code through all different ways to do the same process. So we can set standards with documentation, and then generate code that is basically easy to reproduce, is consistent, and and in that way we are generating better code for our projects. enhance code quality. I think that code quality is one of the rules that we need to try to follow as standards in the community and also in the industry, because we can reduce the code smells, technical debt, follow the documented patterns, convention, the best practices that we usually have, like solid principles, maybe use design patterns, and basically this is for Python. I've been working a lot of with PySpark in Python code. I haven't traced for other languages like SQL or other tools like Pintaho. Um, but yeah, in general, I have been working with PySpark and Python code. So the idea is to generate more readability and maintainable Python code used on transformations. And not at least, but not the last but not least, sorry, safeguard critical knowledge, because as you know, try to encapsulate this knowledge in the code. It's so important, but also uh, persist this knowledge in a documentation could be really valuable to prevent loss of information every time that new member comes and another member goes to another project. So in that way, we can guarantee that we can have accessible and during team transitions, because that's something that it's so important for us in this industry, that we need to keep working even uh, if a new member comes and other go to another project. Let me then first, before to start this section, I would like to recognize my one of my colleagues who has been working a lot of with Copilot, and was who shared with us this knowledge that I'm sharing also to you. He's Brian Jules, and thanks a lot for his encourage and his knowledge too. So, well, this the .ai in folder parent have a really easy structure but valuable. This work mainly in local repositories. When I say in local, is that is not on a wiki. Is more at the repo scope, but is really valuable because we have different layers, but the main tree is the standard procedures. Usually we can set here the default standards that we can set, for example, follow pipeline, pep8 in the Python case, the architecture that we have for a specific pipeline, if we are following ETL or ELT, if we are following some design patterns, or we are using, for example, data pipeline pattern. All this information can be saved in this documentation, that every time that we are going to try to implement a new task, the agent is can get the information from the context and can limitate the scope of possible solutions that we can get from the AI agent. You know that usually these agents can propose really complex solutions, different approaches, and because there are different ways to solve the same issue. But when we set the standards, we limited the possible outcomes that fit and align with our procedures. These task plans has been really important for me, because before to implement what I want to solve, I usually request to the agent to generate a document with the plan, and I can validate that this plan is what I need. Usually I have faced that the agent told me that I can use a tool that is not what I need, or something too complex. So I can review, I can adjust this to works as I need, because at the end, I'm the engineer. So, but that's something that reduce the time and help me to increase my my productivity. Finally, the prompt that is at the end of the image, help me to automatically update this documentation. When every time that I send a new PR, this documentation is going to be updated. So that's so useful. Here we have an example. I prompt, read the context, and give me a plan on a text file. I passed the context. Basically, for this was an implementation of a check pointer. This is a design pattern that we usually apply on data engineering, because every time that the pipeline fails in some steps, I need to reprocess again, and that can take hours. So with the check pointer, I can resume from the latest successfully step. So that was a reduction on costs, reduction on infrastructure, and speed the times to process entire workflow. So the agent give me the features, the key features that I want to implement, give me the lines that I need to implement, and how we're gonna reach each of the goals. Here there's something important that I would like to highlight. That is, it's important to have a clear goal and be capable to put this clear goal in a plan, in a plain English, to make the agent can interpret this plain English, this clear goal, and be more accurate. That's one of the best practices that I encourage you to use. Then here we have the implementation phase. He also calculates some of the times or the complexity. And it gave me an estimate efforts, but to be honest, it's just an estimation, because at the end it takes less time. Maybe this effort estimation is based on how much time can take to me if I'm not using Copilot. But with Copilot, I want to initialize the implementation of a POC. So he can start to do it, and I can review, validate how the code being generated, and that's helped me a lot to reduce the time that I need to use for implement by my own, and basically focus on refines and tuning the output generated by the agent. Now, there's another step. Why? MCP servers have provide more, another functionalities that could be also useful for us. Why? Usually, when we work on a project, we have a source of truth, we usually called the wiki, that could be in the GitHub wiki or in the Atlassian wiki. So with this wiki, we usually have documented the standards, the best practices, the limitation, which technologies are prohibited, and how we usually need to solve common issues, right? So to connect these MCP servers, give to the agent the context related to our project. So we don't need to provide in our text chat. We can get from the wiki, and that is really valuable to reduce the outputs, be more accurate, that aligns with what we need. And also, if we, for example, if we enable the right capabilities for AI in Copilot, we can write documentation or update documentation in the wiki. Of course, we need to guarantee that this output is accurate before we can override something that is already in that wiki. But in general, that reduces a lot of the friction, and these integrations are really valuable. Also, we can go further with some integrations like the Terraform plugin that allow us to create infrastructure from the code. So that's something really valuable. There are some others that I'm gonna highlight next in this slide. I have been used this GitHub to get the tasks. For example, how I mentioned in the .agent pattern, we usually have some tasks and we want to get a plan. We can read directly the repo issue and the task that we have assigned and generate an implementation plan and then proceed. Maybe extract the information that is put inside of that user story and apply the changes that we need to solve the issue. Also, I have been working with Notion as a source of truth. That's another integration that I really appreciate because has been my default on my personal projects. I worked on a project a few years ago that we use Atlassian and have this integration with Atlassian. How mentioned can be useful for get the user stories that I'm currently using or I'm currently working on it. And finally, the context 7 is one that I think that is really important because has a connection with the latest documentation of the tools that we are using. For example, Apache Spark. So he's really is directly connected with the latest version of the documentation of the Apache Spark. So that allows us to get a more recent context of the tools that we are using, because these agents could be training in a past version of the documentation, but when we introduce this context 7, we can get the new release, the new update, the new features that this tool already have. So it's like a way to update, to bring this to the today's version in a simple way without retrain the model that could be more complicated. So I really encourage you to use this context 7 as a way to have the latest version uh, of the tools, the stack that we use, so the agent can generate more accurate code with the latest version of the code. And then the testing. That's something that is really important in this software development life cycle. We start with the explanation of the code, trying to understand legacy code. Then we propose a plan, and then we need to generate testing. Testing is a really relevant part in the software development lifecycle. Here, I want to mention the project that I'm going to use for explain this BDD. I have been working with electrical vehicle cars for my academic studies. Yeah. And these cars have a lot of sensor signals that we can trace. So that's where we're gonna use for the BDD example. So first, I pass in the context a file that I have, well, that one of my uh, mates that was working at the time on the project generate in a old-fashioned way, and I want to update it to a behavioral development driven. Why? Because development driven have more clear language, not just for technical people, also for business stakeholders. Uh, why? Because follow something called Gherkin. The Gherkin is the given, when, then. This structure allow us to have a more clear scenario, the feature that we are using, the scenario that we want to propose, and how we gonna apply each of them for different test cases. So I request, based on the test in file, I want to implement a BDD suite test file. Give me a plan first and explain me how to do it. So the agent answered with first considering this test strategies, and then explain me whether the next steps. He identified that I use poetry, so he suggests to me that I need to add the PyTest BDD. Why? Because I'm also using PyTest to test. So he generate these lines guide me step by steps to be capable to run the VDD, not just implement it, running and validate that is working as expected. Also, create it creates the structure. What is the structure? The feature file that have the definition of the scenarios, the cases, and the code, the PyTest code that can take the context from this feature file and convert in something that could be executable for PyTest. So we have the features, the feature folder, and we have the steps that we need to run to validate that the scenarios is being tested. Let me show you here. We have the feature. The feature is basically the description that we are testing. So charging anomaly enrichment. I was testing the charge of a battery for an electrical vehicle. Then I give the background, the given parameters that I'm going to use for this test, and also the scenario. That is so valuable because that reduces the complexity. I used to have a really long file with all this repeated code for each scenario, a function that create the data that I'm going to use as input, as expected output, and everything that could be reusable, refactor. So I put all this in the scenario and I test like 15 cases, each of them on this way. I'm not going to show all of them, but basically I can reuse them in this format. I put the scenario outline, what is the given, the when, and then the examples of the different scenarios that I want to test it. In case that I have a sensor that was working, if something fails, and many others of these cases that we can have working with electrical vehicles. Here is the structure of the output generating the steps. So we have the decorator with the given. Basically, this translate from the feature. So this is just defined once, and it's going to be repeated and reused through each case that we have uh, in the features. So you don't need to repeat yourself. You can use this syntax and then start to applying. Then we have the when that's going to parse from the features file, the context and all what we need in this more readable way. And finally, what's supposed to be happen. So then this is the structure that he suggests to me. It works really, really well and was the first BDD test scenario that I generated with Copilot in that project. And that changed a lot. Well, the professor that was working with me was more, he was capable to understand not this as code itself, more this that with the description, so he can help us even where he's not a technical person. He was capable to identify the different uh, cases that we were testing. So that increased the cooperative, the cooperation between technical and non-technical users to define the functionalities in a test code. So, well, that's the results and lesson learned. This is the part stage. The results is that I have been able to speed up my my productivity. What I have learned is that we are continually learning, and the way to extract more value from the AI agents use is to follow a strategy, try to generate a system that can be reusable every time that we want to implement a solution. In that way, we can track what we already did, and we can set, we can fix, or we can set some standards to in order to reproduce the code and generate better code in the automated fashion. And for agent instructions, you use approach with .agents directory use index. Did you have a chance to compare this approach with agents MD and corresponding?
No, 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 no. Don't read these questions. Yeah, it's just yeah. So
Okay,
we can switch to Q&A part. If
okay.
ready, yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Felipe, for interesting presentation. Yeah, we have very many questions. I had to filter. Yeah, because we have many, very many. Okay, let's switch to them.
Uh,
So, in your opinion, can AI tool be really required for be really used for refactoring critical production systems without manual work and without persons and engineers? So, is it really safe in your opinion?
Well, I think that is safe, but at the end you need to review everything, every output that is being generated, because sometimes I get some complex outputs and also some incoherent responses. So we need to do the task of reviewing, running the test, guarantee that everything that was running keeps running smoothly, and the new code is being generated. Set this fulfills the expectative of the functionality that you are implementing.
Yeah, because I saw that you used Copilot everywhere, like for code generations and also for test generations. Uh, yeah, Copilot, like AI, can make mistake anywhere. So, will it be really? How much? Okay. In your opinion, like where AI was good and where was bad, based on your
Where
experience?
was good? I think that was good when you have a clear context, a clear definition of the goal, and you also can track, for example, in the behavioral data driven, the help of a business user who really knows what's the output he needs, help us to define a more accurate test. And when we have the test, we implement the functionality. That is also mentioning the test development driven. That is
Mhm.
another approach that can be useful. Before to implement something, you define in a clear way what is the expected results. With that, you avoid to introduce noise, to introduce a bias that you maybe usually have when doing in the other fashion. That is, you first implement and then you adjust your test to pass. So in that way, if you first generate the test, you guarantee that this is describing what you are really expecting from the implementation.
Mhm. Is it better to refactor legacy pipelines with AI or just rebuild them from scratch with AI?
Could you repeat it again? Sorry.
Is it better or easier to refactor legacy pipelines with AI or just rebuild them from scratch?
Well, I think that what I have tried a lot has been refactor them. Maybe rebuild could be imply some limitations. Maybe I need to validate. That's something that definitely I need to do. Maybe try to redoing something and try to validate what could be more efficient. That's
Mhm.
a really good question.
Yeah, also there was a slide where you showed that Copilot extension provides access to multiple different LLMs and yeah, like chatbots. Which of them have you tried and which of them have worked?
Yeah, I have tried some of them. One that has been free, zero time charge, but these have a limited scope. I have usually used this for just simple tasks like documenting with Google Style because it's something that is not too complex, and also for explain existing code. But when we need to do a plan, I prefer use the most advanced one like Opus 4.6. Also, one of my colleagues mentioned recently that he tried 4.6 and 4.5, and he identified that the 4.6 is better for doing planning, and 4.5 is better for implementing. The 4.6 can take more time for implementing. So yeah, each of them have a better performance on some separate tasks, but that's something that you only can learn when you try use them for different tasks.
So use different. Okay, there is some practical question that for agent instructions you used approach with .agents directory and index md file. Did you have a chance to compare it with agents md file and corresponding nested progressive disclosure sub instructions? So fairly, I haven't tried it. Yeah, but maybe you tried.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried. Well, basically, the index has been used as a navigation in the folders, and the
Mm.
agents MD is being outside just to generate this structure. So I think that they are for different tasks. Maybe the
Mhm.
agent is a more overall. In the index is working just as a entry point that allows you, or allows the agent to navigate easy in the generated structure.
Mhm. Yeah. And in your opinion, will AI replace real good engineers and engineer skills? So maybe we do not need to be engineers anymore.
No, I think that we are far from that part. Maybe we need to continue working. How I mentioned in the AI adoption, we are in the process to start using this technology, find more systematic ways to use them. But at least for now, we need to keep the human in the loop to review, to validate, to orchestrate the executions. Maybe with the recent hype of different agents doing the different tasks at the same time, we can reduce. But I believe that we are a little bit far from that point.
Mhm.
Maybe in a more long term could be possible.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Felipe, for your presentation. Thank you for answering questions. Thank you
Thanks,
everyone for
Alex.
joining today. Yeah. So everyone, please leave your feedback on the talk page. You can rate this talk if you like, or maybe if you don't like it. You can give Felipe a badge. Yeah, it will help us to improve our next meetups. So thank you very much. Thank you, Felipe. Yeah. See you tomorrow. Yeah.
Bye
Bye.
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 Thanks.